The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, and welcome to our webinar here from LambTech of Don't Become the Next Cybersecurity Headline. But before we begin, we just have some housekeeping items. We've muted everybody so there's no background noise, so you typically may conduct some things in the background and we won't hear you, but please stay with us. There is a chat window available that if you have a question, please do so. We will hold your questions till a break by our presenter. And at that point, we will repeat the question and our presenter will respond. If a poll is posted, please interact with us. It helps our speaker understand what's going on in the audience and maybe address some of the issues or the higher points that go in. Contact information will be provided at the end of this webinar, and a link to the recording will be available after, and we will send it to you so you can listen again or share it with others. We also have some handouts that will be in that email when it comes around the second half of the security study for 2018 and two other handouts. So with that, we're going to introduce Doug. Doug is the account manager at LambTech. So Doug, thanks for hosting us this morning at LambTech, and all yours.
Thank you, Pete. And thank you, Pete, and good morning. And hope you guys are enjoying the day. And we do welcome you and thank you for your time here today and discussing our ongoing webinars and give you a little bit of a background and history about what LambTech is and how we operate. We were founded by Robert Lamb in 1999 in Sedalia. He still serves as our owner today and is a daily part of our operations. We also provide managed services for business and organizations with our core coverage area stretching everywhere from Kansas City to Columbia, up north in the Brunswick area, down south to the Lake of the Ozarks and Springfield. We do want to notate that we do service other areas and other portions of the state of Missouri, as well as regions across the Midwest. So you can feel free to give us a call. We'll be glad to talk about that more. But LambTech aligns IT solutions with your growth initiatives, and our overall goal is to take care of your technology so you can focus on your day-to-day business and also stop expanding your overall problems. We do offer managed services to not only maintain your security, which we're going to talk about today, but we also offer help desk support, consulting, as well as data recovery and backup services. Now, for those of you that are current clients, we do appreciate your business, but if you're joining us today, we do want to notate that if you want to learn more about how your current agreement works with LambTech, we'll be happy to assist with that. Just give us a call right after this webinar. If you have any general questions on what you do learn and how it works, again, feel free to reach out to our team after the webinar is complete. We'll be glad to talk with you. Now, we're going to discuss some of the current threats today and what's going up on the horizon. We're happy to hear more about cybersecurity and how you can have the best practices to protect your network with not only LambTech, but also our great partners in SonicWall, who we'll hear from today. So without further ado, my pleasure to introduce Hannah McCarthy and also Troy Ryan from SonicWall. Troy, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your time. Thanks for having me. Hopefully, most of you or some of you were on this a similar webinar we did back in April that covered the 2018 Cyber Threat Report. Every year we release the in-depth cyber industry report that analyzes intelligence and cyber attack behavior from the previous 12 months. We decided this year that probably wasn't often enough, so we're doing what we're calling a mid-year update to that cyber threat report. I'm not sure, is the slide deck up and running? I still see the introduction here.
Yes, it is up and running. We're on the table of contents.
Okay, unfortunately I can't see that, so we'll just go off my copy of the slides here. Table of contents. Okay, so go ahead and go. We can jump over to the introduction.
Okay.
So we're going to explore the mid-year update to discover cyber attack trends for the first 6 months of this year, including the real-world threat intelligence on malware, ransomware, encrypted attacks, and chip-based attacks. You'll see down at the bottom of the slide there, available on our website are some real-time attack data dashboards that you can view anytime. They're pretty interesting. Next slide. So malware volume surges in 2018. Last year, we talked about the fact that it made a comeback. After 2016, there was a huge drop in malware volumes. Comeback last year reached 9.32 billion attacks. And unfortunately, in 2018, is outpacing last year's record numbers. Year to date, this time in 2018, we've seen almost 6 billion malware attacks. And that's a 102% increase. That's over double what we saw even in 2017. You'll see in this report that we tend to report two key cyber attacks in different categories, even though they're the same process. We talk about malware in general, but then we more specifically talk about ransomware on the next slide. Ransomware, and the reason why we kind of focus more on ransomware is just because the impact that ransomware has on a business. So we like to address that individually. One of the most high-profile cases so far this year, obviously, was the SamSam ransomware attack on the city of Atlanta. The SamSam ransomware variant, that's a key word in that statement, is variant, affects 5 out of 13 city departments and shut down the system for 10 days. Because of the naming differences between security vendors, SonicWall customers were protected by SamSam ransomware via the hidden tier gateway antivirus signature. So everybody that's doing threat analysis clearly has their own way of naming things. And in general, for the most part, one of the names is picked and kind of highlighted as the primary name. So a lot of times when you're looking at emerging threats, when they hit the news, you might not see where a certain vendor has a signature or a coverage for that particular threat, and that's just due to the naming schemes. So, but in general, as we look at the threat landscape today, the city of Atlanta specifically, and what's going on with WannaCry, Petya, non-Petya, those types of malware attacks. We're using a new acronym in the security industry called APTs, or Advanced Persistent Threats. What those are people who are experts at hiding their attack sources. All right, they're a set of stealthy and continuous computer hacking processes. They're orchestrated by a person or persons targeting a specific entity. They usually target a private organization or a state, and they're for business or political motivations. Because of their high degree of covertness, these attacks happen over a long period of time. So what they're doing is they're taking what they learned 3 years ago, reconstructing it and reusing it. And a lot of times, they're attacking the same endpoints, the same targets, right? And until they're caught, they just continue to do what they're doing, right? That's what happens in the case of like the city of Atlanta. Next slide. Encrypted attacks ascend to record highs. So global encrypted cyber attacks, right? We talked about this earlier this year. So in 2017, sessions encrypted by SSL TLS represented about 68% of total web traffic. During the 12-month span, the average organization would have missed more than 900 file-based attacks per year hidden by TLS SSL encryption. And through the first 6 months of 2018, that number is up to 69.7% of sessions Logically, the use of encrypted cyber attack is increasing dramatically. SonicWall recorded 1.4 million encrypted attacks globally in 2018 so far. That is a 275% increase year to date over 2017. So what does that mean, right? When we go to a website, obviously it redirects to the encrypted or secure version of that website, which is the HTTPS side. This was all born out of providing security to financial information initially, expanded to healthcare, anything that needs to traverse the internet in an encrypted state, right? Stuff that we don't want sniffed. The internet was born, everything was in clear text, all websites, all web data, all traffic was in clear text. Anybody that had access to a network endpoint somewhere on the internet could sniff that data. So of course we needed a way to protect that data. That's where the encryption was born. Now nearly 80% of that traffic is encrypted now. I'm sorry, 70%. What does that mean? Well, that means that the threat actors aren't able to inject malicious code into that traffic anymore. It's encrypted. So they turned the tables and they started using that encryption technology to deliver the malware. That's becoming more and more prevalent, as you can see. They create an encrypted tunnel to the endpoint. The security gateway, all the layered security approach that we put that's designed to protect those endpoints in that network can no longer inspect that traffic. Next slide. We have a new technology that stands for real-time deep memory inspection that's discovering new malware variants. We detected 12,300 new malware variants by this RTDMI engine since January of 2018 when it went live and in production. What is this real-time deep memory inspection? It's part of our sandboxing technology that scans for zero-day threats in your web traffic, in your email traffic, in your file transfers. All of the products that support our capture ATP sandboxing technology submits these files to our data center where we run them through a hypervisor, an emulator, we run it through virtualization, and now we do this real-time deep memory inspection. There's a handout that you'll get that kind of describes what real-time deep memory inspection is. It focuses primarily on a couple of areas: fileless malware, where your typical endpoint protection software can't scan the file if there is no file, right? So it's a script or a remote execution from another machine, or more importantly, it's an encrypted file, right? So if I'm delivering malware through an encrypted channel, and then I write it to the disk encrypted, and now your endpoint virus scanner cannot do the job that it's meant to do to detect malware in that file, right? And the only time that that virus then is detectable is when it's executed in memory. And that's what this technology is designed to do, to catch it at that level. We now have signatures that detect two of the big news stories recently were Meltdown and Spectre. They were processor-based only attacks. Intel and AMD and most of the those chip manufacturers that run most of our devices are susceptible to those attacks. Our TDMI engine has the ability to detect those two types of attacks now. Next slide. New form of attack. With the growth of cryptocurrency going mainstream in the last 12 months, cyber criminals don't hesitate to take full advantage. Instead of investing in crypto mining hardware infrastructure like other hopeful billionaires, online criminals opt to employ techniques called crypto jacking. So the whole Bitcoin and cryptocurrency thing is probably not as mainstream as we like to believe it is in the IT industry. Most people still don't quite understand what it is, but rather than the attacks are as they always do, are changing, and instead of going after real dollars, they're going after these cryptocurrencies, which are a whole lot harder to track. They're a whole lot harder to recover. And generally law enforcement really doesn't have any way to detect or investigate these types of exploits. So that's a whole new thing with an invention of a new type of currency. We have an invention of a new kind of attack, right? So next slide. This talks about bringing threat intelligence together in a single place. It's great that we have all these layers of security, right? We have gateway antivirus, we have an email security product, you have endpoint protection on your clients, you have all these different layers of security, but it's important to bring all that information together in a single place so you can have actionable threat intelligence. So most vendors, and SonicWall included, are bringing all those things into a single pane of glass cloud management console where you can see and correlate the malware intrusions, ransomware, the encrypted threats, spam, phishing, and the zero-day threats. You can get a report on what files were downloaded and what were detected as malware, and then take action on those. Next slide, SonicWall's Capture Threat Network. Everybody has one of these. We tout that we have one of the best. Our threat network contains over 1 million sensors across 200 countries. Of course, it's monitored 24/7, 365. We're pretty proud that we have less than 24-hour response to zero-day vulnerabilities. We detect those zero-day vulnerabilities through our sandboxing technology that we talked about a little earlier. And we're going to get into that a little more depth here in just a couple of minutes. I think we talked about this back in April, but there's two key areas where a lot of companies or a lot of people are behind in the game. So the next slide, decrypting encrypted threats. That's still one of the most important things that a majority of people aren't doing. Next slide. Today's popular websites are largely encrypted. We talked about that already. Transport layer security, or SSL encryption. All that means is that when a client makes a request to a website, that website then redirects them to the secure version of the site where they exchange information to establish an encrypted tunnel. And again, that's meant to protect the end user, to protect the data from being sniffed by threat actors, right? Next slide, important, you cannot stop what you cannot see, right? So once that traffic is encrypted coming through your firewall or your other security devices, you can no longer inspect it. It's encrypted. That's the point, right? So I can't see what malicious code might be embedded into that file if I can't decrypt the file. Okay. Next slide. Survey respondents said that half of all known cyber attacks used SSL encryption to evade detection in the last 12 months. Okay, only going to grow. It's only going to go up from there. So now they're not only delivering that malware via an encrypted channel, they're encrypting the attack once it reaches the machine, and then they're creating their own encrypted channel back out to get the data, the command and control commands in and out of that network. So while we have a way to detect command and control messages, and we have a blacklist of such command and control servers, if that connection is encrypted to another site, now it has a pathway back out to the command and control servers that we can't inspect. So encryption of inbound and outbound web traffic will continue to increase. Use of SSL encryption to mask malicious activity will parallel this growth. 3 common barriers to implementing proper SSL inspection are lack of security tools, insufficient resources, and performance degradation. We'll talk about a couple of those here in a second. SSL bandwidth requirements diminish the effectiveness of existing security controls. Most people don't believe their organization can properly inspect the SSL traffic. The inability to inspect encrypted traffic or compromise capacity to meet existing future compliance requirements, right? So again, if we can't see it, we can't detect it, we can't report on it, you can't meet your compliance. Next slide, state of encrypted traffic. 89% think that TLS SSL decryption is important. All right, we've been banging the drum for years. Most people kind of understand it now. They know why they need to do it. 62% does not currently decrypt web traffic. Nearly half of them claim that the attack leveraged SSL traffic to evade detection, and 15% simply weren't sure. Next slide, why are organizations not inspecting traffic? 40% of the respondents cited a lack of enabling security tools, okay? Current firewall, current security setup, whatever it is, simply can't do it. There's still vendors out there today selling products that can't do inspection of encrypted traffic. 45% of those people say they have insufficient resources to deploy, set up, manage, and tune these things. Takes a fair amount of expertise and some time, right? Insufficient resources, whether it be IT or simply the devices they have can't do it. And the reason why is because 45% cited that there's a performance degradation when enabling this technology, and there is, right? And if you're not sized correctly, or if your firewall's old, you've outgrown it, you're already pushing the limits of the capacity of it, then 45% of those people say they simply can't do it because of the performance degradation. Next slide, performance penalty on security systems with SSL inspection as active can be as high as 81%. So if you're running a firewall or security device that even only running at half capacity currently, and you attempt to enable this technology, chances are you're going to max it out pretty quick. That's where the technicians over at LambTech can help with tuning to be able to enable this inspection for the most important, the most vulnerable traffic. And sometimes you simply exclude portions of that traffic, so that way you can fit within the current size firewall. Obviously, at some point you would want to plan to upgrade that security device to a much larger device to be able to cover this the performance degradation. Next slide, inspecting strategies. This is somewhat interesting. 53% of those people, of the respondents, using commercial solutions with deep packet inspection. Obviously, that would be the preferred way. 44% commercial solution that utilizes a big data storage, logging and taking the data and then reacting to the data. 35% has built their own homegrown traffic monitoring, and 28% are doing what's considered manual inspection. Not really sure how manual inspection works, but next slide. If your firewall is not inspecting encrypted traffic, you're missing a lot of the value in your firewall. Organizations must have deep packet inspection of SSL and TLS traffic to eliminate blind spots. So here's a little graph down there that kind of shows what we've already talked about, how the encrypted channel is set up, what protocols are used on it, and how does it bypass. So we'll talk about that a little bit more on that next slide. Decrypt and inspect encrypted traffic with DPI SSL. So here it shows how the encryption channel is set up. A page visit to a compromised goods site, right? This is where kind of an important part. Content filtering is great. It's meant to keep people off malicious sites. It's meant to keep people off sites that aren't pertinent to the workplace. But it doesn't protect you wholly, and here's why. There's plenty of instances where a perfectly safe or good site has been hacked, or code has been injected into those sites, and suddenly now that site is compromised and now is delivering malware. One of the most famous ones was years ago was Yahoo's Malvertising site, where they had advertising feeds that were infected with malicious code, that when you would go to Yahoo search web page, the page itself and the web server that was delivering that search engine was perfectly safe, but they're including advertisements in those pages that were not. So again, compromised good site. The exploit is executed. back down to the client. The now infected client makes a malware request to a malware hosting server. And again, this isn't an encrypted channel. So unless you're decrypting and inspecting that, that goes straight past the security services, goes to the malware hosting site, and guess what? You get more malware, right? And that's why you see a lot of times when you click on a website that might be infected, you might get a pop-up, but technically that is nothing more than a fake site that doesn't contain any malware. What happens, or what they attempt to do, is get you to click on that. And by clicking on that, now you have requested an encrypted session to a malware hosting server. And that's the channel that they need to deliver more malware, right? And again, once that additional malware is downloaded to the client now has a way to establish an outbound encrypted connection to command and control servers and exfiltrate your data. So that's how that works. Down here, here's how we deal with that. What we do is the firewall then intercepts that HTTPS request. It establishes that secure tunnel between the client and the firewall. It inspects the traffic while it's decrypted in the firewall. It then connects to the remote server, the web server, creates another encrypted tunnel to send that traffic across. That is how we are able to apply all of the security services that you would expect to be on all the traffic coming through the firewall to that encrypted traffic. The good thing about the way that this is done is that it's still encrypted on both the LAN and the WAN side. So we still have the same security and privacy that we needed, the whole reason why HTTPS websites were created, but we can apply security services and inspect that traffic. Next slide. Inspecting streams of packets before they reassemble to do bad things, right? So as you're downloading files off the internet, you're receiving packets until the entire file is received, right? So it's coming in one packet at a time. So the way our firewall works is we do what's called reassembly-free DPI inspection. So the packets come into the firewall, they're spread across multiple processors in the firewall, and that's how we're able to get the throughput that we can get for today's bandwidth needs. And as those are coming through, we're inspecting them, and we're also submitting them to our Capture ATP client for zero-day threat analysis. There's a technology in there that it's called block until verdict. Now, what that does is it saves the last couple of packets of a file download until we make a determination on whether or not that file download is malicious. And of course, if we determine it's malicious, we drop the last couple packets. The client never receives the entire file. The download fails, and we prevented a malware attack. Right. Next slide. Advanced Gateway Security Suite is what we sell. What that covers, or the way it's intended to protect. We start with, again, the content filtering, right? We're gonna upfront, if we know about it, we're gonna block you from going to the malicious websites. We can't stop it all with content filtering, so of course we have the Gateway Antivirus and Intrusion Prevention System. That is a signature-based solution. Again, it blocks only what we know about. If we know about that virus, we know what it looks like, we have a signature for it, of course the Gateway Antivirus Engine is going to block it. And then of course we talked about Capture ATP, which is our zero-day threat analysis. That's where we're going to take that file that we don't know, that we don't recognize, that may contain malicious code. We're going to send it up to our sandbox in the cloud in our data center, and we're going to analyze it, and we're going to return a verdict for it. So down at the bottom of that page, you kind of see how this all works. We have a file that's coming through email, PDF, streaming data. It goes through our capture labs where we use, honest to goodness, machine learning or heuristics or behavioral analysis. We obviously are going to block the classified malware, the ransomware, the WannaCry, the Spartan. And then we send over the unknown to the 4 sandboxes I talked about: hypervisor emulation, virtualization, our real-time deep memory inspection. We block it until verdict. We analyzed 9.3 billion malware attacks in 2017, and as we know, we're already up to 6 billion this year. What does it look like? How do you see it? This is a pretty interesting slide. I generally don't include this one, but I thought it's kind of neat. This is kind of what it shows a typical network running capture HTTP would see. These are files that were submitted to our cloud sandbox. This is kind of a report that shows you what it was submitted, where it came from, who was downloading it, and what the verdict on it was. If you click on one of the malicious links in this report, it pulls it up and it shows you additional things. It shows you that it went through 62 virus scanners. It went through two sandboxes. It shows you the entire process that it went through. It shows you the files that it wrote. There's actually in here, I wasn't able to include it. There's actually a way to watch the actual file and malware being launched in the virtual environment. And just like you would see if you got infected on your client and you see all the pop-ups start popping up all over your screen and you can't close them, it actually records that and shows you what that file did to that emulated or virtualized client. It's really neat to see. And let's see, is there anything else here to talk about? I think that about covers it. Last slide. I want to thank you guys for your time. I am the SE for the Great Plains territory, so I cover all of your accounts, and would happy to get on phone calls to discuss anything you guys want with LambTech about your security posture.
Well, thank you, Troy, for the presentation here today and talking about the latest in cybersecurity. We also appreciate Hannah and background here today, but appreciate all those that came in and reviewed our webinar overall about cybersecurity with SonicWall. If you're, again, we want to remind you about this. If you are a current client and you want to see what you learned and how it pertains to your agreement, feel free to give us a call after the webinar. And if you're joining us and wanting to learn more about LambTech and our offerings, you can give us a call. You can call me direct at 660-851-7342, and also visit our website at lambtech.com. We thank you for your time and hope you have a fantastic day.